What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Disc Golf Nerd Plastic Podcast. I wanted to do a recap of Beaver State Fling 2018. One of my favorite tournaments of the season. It's always something that I try to go and spectate personally. I only made it out for the finals this year, as I tend to do. I don't often get out there for Friday and Saturday. Sunday is usually my day. I go out there, spend a little time at Tournament Central, hang out, say hello to some people, and then go out and watch the lead card for Sunday. I did have a couple of things I had jotted down about the earlier rounds to kind of, just to recap some interesting things that took place. So, first of all, the Beaver State Fling is a national tour event. It takes place in Estacada, Oregon, at the famed Milo MacIver State Park. It's a really well-loved and revered place, and it's one of those places that constantly comes up. And if you hear a professional player, say on an interview or something like that, asked, what are your favorite tournaments? What are some of your favorite courses on tour? Beaver State Fling and Milo MacIver State Park are almost constantly part of that discussion. It's just a really special place. Throughout the rest of the year, there's 27 holes out there. There's an 18-hole course, and then there's another 9-hole course. For the Beaver State Fling, they expanded to 2 full championship-style 18-hole disc golf courses that just require you to throw everything from a 180-foot dead straight putter shot all the way up to really long 1,200-foot par 5s that require rollers and turnovers and forehands and usually a putt to get a 4 there, and everything in between. Forehand rollers, touch turnovers with a mid-range, giant sky anhyzers that you need to get lucky, power hyzers, finesse straight shots with fairway drivers. I mean, it forces you to throw everything, uphill, downhill, placement shots, total mashes. It's not one of those courses that you can go out and just bomb. You got to be very controlled. There's not much in the way of actual OB. There's some roads that come into play. There's a couple of island holes that you need to be wary of, but there's not a ton of rope OB or anything like that whatsoever, really. There's a little bit, but it's pretty minimal. For the most part, you have natural rough that you're trying to stay out at Milo. If you keep it in the fairway, you throw accurate, controlled shots, you can shoot really well there. We saw some high scores, some double-digit scores come out over the weekend. That's not uncommon at the highest level for these guys. But you can also see really high-level players finishing quite poorly as well. I guess I don't necessarily need to call out any names. If you guys want to go look through the scoring and you get towards the bottom, you're going to see some names in there that are typically up challenging for wins and for top 10 finishes at most of the events. And if you get off the fairway and you just start struggling out here, it can get ugly quick and it can punish you. But we've seen some really great play this weekend. Let's talk about it a little bit. So, yeah, one of the other things that's great about Milo is just a beautiful place to hang out. It's just a nice place to be. The Clackamas River is right there. You can do like a little mini float that takes a couple hours from one side of the park to the other down the Clackamas River. There's great swimming there. It looks like summer is right around the corner here in Portland. I think it's going to be in the 80s up into the 90s this week, and I am for sure hoping to get myself in some water. I'm ready. It's been a long winter, and I'm ready to get out and start enjoying some of that summer living out here in Oregon. Make sure I can get nice and warmed up before my rounds, which is nice. And then also nice and cool after my rounds, getting in some water. The Clackamas River, definitely worth mentioning out at Milo. Also, pro tip for you guys that don't necessarily go out to Milo a lot, or if you travel for the Beaver State and you don't come here very often, you might not know, but if you go all the way to the backside of the park, so deep in to the backside of the park there, you'll find what is called Estacada Lake. It's above the dam, hydroelectric dam that's on the Clackamas River. If you go up above that, it's the same exact beautiful, crystal clear, ice-cold water, but there's no current, and it's super deep, and there's boat launches there, and there's a dock, and different facilities there, and that is probably my favorite place to go swimming with inside the park. Nothing against the current and stuff, but you have to worry about some slippery rocks and whatever else in the wild part of the river. Up there in the lake where it's dammed off, it's really deep and really nice to swim, and you don't have to worry about the footing or the current or any of that kind of stuff nearly as much. Also, another interesting thing about Milo is if you get down there and you're standing on the dock there or at the boat launch and you look straight across, that's Timber Park, which is another awesome disc golf course out in Estacada. It's a 21-hole layout, far less challenging and kind of more average player friendly than Milo typically is. Milo also has two different sets of tee pads, so you have the longs and the shorts. If you play the short tee pads, it's pretty manageable for just about anybody. Again, you'll get into some trouble, of course, but it's definitely doable. If you play all longs out at Milo, and especially when they expand it to Beaver State layout, it definitely becomes a super pro level and tough course, but tough but fair and just epic. But Timber Park's great as well, and I think it's kind of funny that, you know, when you go finish around at Timber Park, you can take a dip in Estacada Lake and you're looking straight across at Milo and vice versa, so that's kind of interesting. Theoretically, you could like take a raft across, but when you get to Milo, then you're looking at a huge walk to get over the disc golf course because it's a big state park with a lot of real estate. So getting into the first few rounds, I just have a couple things I jotted down that were of interest to me. So how this tournament works is a little bit different than the rest of them. You play the entire layout on Friday. So you play East and West, two 18-hole courses on Friday afternoon. And then the first round, I don't think they do any kind of feature cards or anything. It's a shotgun start. Everybody fires off and they're ready to go. And then the second round, it's all, you know, ordered based on score, obviously, and you have a lead card there. Most of the media crews, Jomez and Central Coast, who are doing FPO and MPO lead cards, they did not do the first round because if you do first round and second round, now you're trying to logistically edit and release two rounds from one day, and it pushes everything back a couple of days. And disc golfers are spoiled now, and we want what we get all the time. We want that next day coverage. We're chomping at the bit to watch it, and they knew that they were going to get a lot of grief if they kind of kicked the can into Monday, Tuesday to get the final round out because of putting themselves behind by trying to do 1 and 2 all Friday, and then Saturday it just kicks everything down a day. So they decided, let the pros play out round 1, and then they'll take the lead card after that, a true lead card based on the players that shot the best in the opening round, and follow second round. So first round, Eagle McMahon was 10 down. He was leading the tournament. Other interesting things that happened during that first round, I don't know if it was first or second round, but Paul Ulibarri threw in a shot from over 300 feet on hole 11. I always forget East and West. I'm sorry. I'm going to be perfectly honest. I always forget East and West. The course they finished on the final day, hole 11, it's the one, if you watch the coverage, and everybody's been talking about Drew Gibson throwing this massive turnover around the tree, rather than playing this. It's typically a pretty basic par 4. They throw a check-up kind of controlled hyzer, and then it's a forehand or a backhand turnover into the green. Usually you're looking for star frames on this hole. It's not very difficult, especially on the lead card. If you're taking anything more than a 4, you know, if you bogey that hole somehow, you're definitely losing strokes. And even if you take a 4, you're probably losing strokes to a lot of the better players on that hole. Anyway, no coverage of it, so I'm not sure how it happened, but I can confirm that Paul Ulibarri had a 2 on that hole. I'm assuming he just threw in the forehand for 2 from outside 300 feet, which is pretty badass. Probably skipped in, I would guess, but who knows. Wish we had footage of that, because that would be pretty cool. That's the only 2 on that hole that I know of. Again, it's not an easy... it's not a hard par 4, but it's definitely a 2-shot hole. You throw the placement hyzer, and then you throw something into the green. But Drew Gibson was going with this disgusting giant turnover outside and getting way, way closer. We saw in the final round, Garrett Gerthy went for the same shot and ended up in a terrible position in the rough, super bushy, overgrown trees that you're trying to avoid with the placement hyzer. He turned it over deep in there and essentially ended up having to pitch out. Anyway, we'll get back to the final round in a little bit. Paul and Eagle both got 2s on the Genius hole, which is hole 9 of that same layout. Very famous hole. I'm sure you guys have heard about it or seen it. It's basically a downhill tunnel shot, and then you want it to get down the hill and start fading in. If you absolutely crush it, pretty much all the top arms can reach it for 2. Eagle absolutely parked it at one point, which was kind of ridiculous. I mean, put it within 20. Seen Paul eagle that hole many times. Ricky deuced it last year with a huge putt right from the edge, almost in the road. I believe Ricky took a bogey on that hole on Friday, and I'm assuming he went out of bounds off the tee. I don't know how else you do that on that hole, because it's one of those ones that you could almost say it's a pro par 3 for these guys. It's hard too, but enough of them happen that, yeah, I mean, if you get anything down there to pitch up and down for your 3, is really easy. So I'm assuming Ricky ended up drifting too far left and out of bounds to take a bogey there. I could be wrong on the scoring there, but that's something that I had in my notes. Other things, definitely saw some eagles on the famous Albatross hole. We don't need to go into that again, but you guys know Philo threw in for 2 in the 2016 Beaver State on the shorter, much easier par 5 on the other course. Not the 1,200-foot monster that's towards the end of the course they play on Sunday. He threw in a pretty ridiculous flex shot that we've all seen plenty of times, but we saw a number of 3s on that hole. Obviously no more 2s, and definitely nothing filmed, but definitely saw some eagles out there. I believe Garrett Gerthy not only eagled that hole, but then parked the next one, which is one you don't see eagled very much at all. Just ridiculous. I think that's on film. I'm not really sure. I got to go back. It's about time I probably start over and rewatch the whole event again. The actual week, is kind of a whirlwind, and it's kind of weird for me because I'm on social media and I'm following all the different players and people in our game, and of course with the Disc Golf Nerd page, that's kind of the point of it. It's my Instagram is almost exclusively disc golf related. I follow a handful of other things that I find of interest, but for the most part, I'm trying to use it as a way to connect and keep up with the disc golfers and the disc golf community in general. And I just feel like I'm just stalking everybody because they're all, there's videos of them getting food, 2 minutes away from where I work every day, and stuff like that, and just watching where everybody's going around town and all these places that I know, and they're at Portland City Grill, which is a pretty touristy spot, and Multnomah Falls, and all the different various spots that you hit up, and Voodoo Donut. Everybody's going to Voodoo Donut. Another pro tip: Blue Star donuts are far superior to Voodoo Donut. Voodoo Donuts, I don't know, they're okay. It's just kind of a hype touristy thing at this point. The donuts aren't really that great. They're not bad. Don't get me wrong. It's donuts. It's kind of hard to mess up a donut. I'm a fat guy, I'll eat a donut. It's fine. But Blue Star donuts are just way more on point with their flavor and their consistency. They're just really solid. I would definitely recommend, if you guys are in Portland, check out Blue Star. If they have the chocolate old-fashioned buttermilk, just straight up glazed donut, it's probably the best donut in the world that I've ever had. They're just ridiculous how good those stupid things are. I don't get them very often, but when I do, I go Blue Star. But yeah, I've been to Voodoo Donut plenty of times, but pretty much always when somebody's visiting Portland, because it is a tourist trap. Anyway, that doesn't really matter. Another interesting thing, but in that same kind of vein, I have been keeping my eyes open at work because I figured I would probably see somebody at some point just bumming around that area, and I was I was getting my morning started, opening the back door to the basement where we do prep and stuff. So I work in kitchen manager, and there's Eagle hanging out outside of a thrift store. I'm like, oh, what's up, Eagle? So I walked over there. I was like, I guess I'll go say hi, just real quick. And it's like, hey, what's up, Eagle? He's like, oh, hey, what's up, man? And I'm Justin. Shook his hand. I was like, what you up to? He's like, oh, we just ate over here and just hanging out for the day. I was like, okay, sweet, well, good luck this weekend. And nice kid, I didn't want to give him an ear beating or anything. I just wanted to say hello real quick. And then I saw his dad and dude, I think his name's Jeff Corns, I believe, who works with Discmania. And I saw them cross the street after that, and it's just kind of funny. I was like, I knew that was going to happen eventually, and it's just interesting how it's just kind of cool, to have all the pros in town and feel like I could run into them at any moment. I actually ended up setting up Will Schustrick and Drew Gibson to stay out with my buddy Andy that you've seen on a couple of my videos and I've referenced before. He has a spare room and a pull-out couch and stuff. They'd actually... Gibney had reached out to see if maybe I could put him up, and I could have, but I don't have nearly as much room in a 2-bedroom apartment, so I was just like, I'll see if I can figure out something else, and Andy was able to make it happen. Seemed like it worked out great. I was a little bit disappointed I didn't really get to hang out with those guys at all, but they were kind of doing their own thing. I think they did one practice round, but I believe I was working that day, so I missed it, but they didn't really need me in tow for that anyway. They'd just be watching me throw up the rear all day while they're hundreds of feet in front of me on every drive. It seemed it would probably end up working out that way, but either way, I met Will briefly, but he had a rough final round, and he wasn't terribly talkative after Sunday. But so I didn't get out there Friday or Saturday. I ended up just kind of hanging out. The weather wasn't awesome either. It was stunning the whole week leading up to Beaver State, and probably the whole month leading up to Beaver State. It's been beautiful out here, and I'm sure all the players and the media members were sick of hearing that, because everybody was like, oh, it's been so nice, and then it's rainy and gross when you guys are trying to film and play professional disc golf. But that's what happened. So I mentioned it to Tino, and I ran into her to say hello, and she's like, yeah, that's what everybody's been telling me. And the way she said it, it seemed like they were like kind of sick of hearing about how awesome Oregon's been. And then the second they roll into town, it just started pouring and whatever. But it's like anything else. Oregon is a confused state. She's cranky. Sometimes she's absolutely stunning and just unbelievably beautiful. And other times it rains a whole bunch. It's just kind of the way, that's kind of what you deal with in the Pacific Northwest. We're on the outskirts of essentially a rainforest, up in, people are like, oh, Seattle rains so much. Like, yeah, because they cut down a northern rainforest and put a city there. That's why it rains so much. That's pretty much what the deal is. Look at the Olympic Peninsula and stuff like that. It's rainforest. It doesn't seem like it because it's not like the typical, jungle South American rainforest, but that's what it is. So I love it. Oregon's great, and it's a beautiful place. So you take the good with the bad, but I would have, of course, preferred that it would be 75 and sunny and beautiful, and it would have made for a much more fun atmosphere with everybody in T-shirts and flip-flops and going to the river after the rounds and all that kind of stuff. But that's just not how it worked out. Other years it has, for sure, so that's cool. But this year it did rain, so I didn't go out there Friday. I was just hanging out. I think next year I'm going to really make a point to go out on Friday. That's what I want to do. I want to go out on Friday. I want to hang out at Tournament Central quite a bit, and I want to just kind of post up somewhere where I can see a lot of different groups come through and throw. Because I always go out Sunday and I always follow the lead card, and that's cool, and I love it, and I'm happy to be able to do so. But only 1 or 2 years I went out like before that and really just watch who I want to watch. Oh, if a card comes through and they're interesting, I'll follow them for a few holes. Or I'll just post up at one tee pad with a lawn chair and some drinks and whatever, and just kind of hang out and watch a ton of players come through and throw on a big par 5 tee shot. Like sit at the albatross hole by the tee pad there with a picnic blanket and just watch everybody come through and rip that first shot. That would be fun. I got nothing against that. So that's kind of my plan for next year. Didn't happen this year. Saturday, I think it got quite miserable out there. Started raining, didn't stop raining for most of the round. I think we saw a lot of players struggle with that. I believe Drew Gibson, I don't know, I haven't spoke to him, but it seemed like he got bothered by the rain based on some of his Instagram posts and some of the situations where his putting was not really hitting on all cylinders like it was the first day. He was just crushing it that first day. It's also interesting, they brought it up on Smashbox, and I totally agree, that there's kind of a different climate to the end of events these days having UDisc, because you can see exactly where you're at. It's quite interesting there because in years past, you kind of had to, maybe you had a spy kind of following the group in front of you and then reporting back perhaps, or something like that, where you didn't have that live scoring that you could literally go back and check and see how everything was going. So it's pretty interesting to see how all that worked out. All right, so it's only giving me final scores here. still in terms of the totals, but I can look at the rounds at least and see where we're at here. So yeah, Drew ended up dropping down a little bit here, round 3. That's definitely what happened, and round 4 wasn't all that much different, unfortunately. So yeah, let's take a look here. First round, yeah, Eagle, 10 down, and then Paul Ulibarri 6 down. Drew Gibson shot 9 down, so he's right there. 1 bogey, and the rest all birdies. Kevin Jones also took a 3 on the Albatross hole, I believe that is. Yeah, there was several 3s on that hole, in fact. Bradley, James Proctor, Colton Montgomery, Kyle Crabtree, Thomas Tomaselli, John Anderson, a whole bunch of folks took 3s there, it seems. Jeremy Colling took a 6 there. Oh no, what is he, me? That's what I do. Okay. Not typical. Not always, but I have definitely done that. Okay, now I've messed up my scoring by clicking around. Too much information on UDisc here, but yeah, we definitely saw some hot scores from day one. Some kind of strange scores as well, like Paul McBeth really not being in contention much at all for the Beaver State, which is quite rare. The first year I went out there, Paul won, and I kind of didn't even really know who he was in those days. And I remember him eagling the Long Island hole, hole 10, right after the Genius hole. Just a ridiculous drive and a huge putt across the island for 2, and just kind of steamrolled from there. Parked 15, birdied 16, and ended up taking it down. Yeah, just not so much for him this year. The final round, the lead card consisted of probably the 4 farthest throwers on Earth right now. I mean, there's a couple of guys you could throw in there that weren't part of it that are in the argument for, ridiculously far throwers, like David Wiggins, obviously. Also, I haven't seen Wiggins in a while. I don't believe he's been touring at all. I don't know what he's up to. I'm really not sure. Also, Alex Geisinger is an absolute destroyer of a disc, and he was not out here either, from what I understand. So Dion Arlen was caddying for Sexton at some point. I believe Ian mentioned it on the coverage. Like, this is probably one of the few times you see like somebody on a lead card and their caddy throws considerably farther than them. But Dion's in the 700 club, I believe. I mean, the dude throws so far, it's just disgusting. It's not even fair, and it definitely is quite ridiculous to think about throwing anything over. I mean, even a 500-foot shot is just so out of my frame of reference or realm of possibility. It's just ridiculous. So, the final round, lead card, Eagle McMahon, Simon Lizotte, Garrett Gurthey, and Drew Gibson. Also, for the record, his name is Garrett Gurthey. Gurthey. The R comes before the TH. I heard so many people say Guthrie all weekend, and it was annoying the hell out of me. They announced him, the guy who announced him at hole 1 as Garrett Guthrie. It's like, come on, dude. Read it. The R comes before the TH. How hard is it to sound that out? His name is Gurthey. God, that irks me. Another complete aside here. Quick disc golf nerd rant in the middle of the podcast. The name of the company is Innova. Period. It's not Innova. Just stop with the Innova. No one calls it Innova who knows what they're talking about. Every time I hear that, it annoys the hell out of me. If Paul McBeth and the people who run Innova and Dave Dunapace and all these people call it Innova, that's the name. You don't get to just say it's something else. It's freaking Innova, okay? The company's called Innova. Period. End rant. Drive me crazy with this mispronunciation. Garrett Gurthey was on the lead card as well, and then Drew Gibson. So these guys are just absolute smashers of the disc, and I was kind of, in a way, I was like, you know what? That's awesome, but Milo's not necessarily the best course to showcase that. If this was like Blue Lake or something like that, or one of these kind of open golf course style courses that we've been seeing a lot over the course of the year, it would be a little bit more fun to watch this particular card, because Milo doesn't necessarily require a ton of distance. I think the real benefit of having that bigger arm is that Drew Gibson is throwing on a shot where a lot of players have to throw their max distance driver. He's throwing a Firebird. for a hyzer. You know what I mean? That's the difference. Eagle can throw a fairway driver where somebody else is throwing max distance. They can throw putters and mid-ranges on these shots where people are throwing drivers consistently. So I think that's where it comes in, and that's one of the aspects of having a big arm and being a long thrower that a lot of people don't talk about in terms of the actual benefit of being a long thrower. Is not necessarily that they can reach these huge distances at max distance range, but Drew Gibson can throw a rock, over 400 probably on a shot that then have it fly flat, land flat, where other players are needing to club up to a max distance driver to try to hit that, or at least some type of driver to try to hit that distance range. It's going to skip more when it lands. It's going to veer one way or the other more. It's going to land with more energy and more action on the ground, where you can throw a putter or mid-range and get that same distance. You're always going to be more controlled in doing so, and you're able to control the angle of your landing that much better. So I think that's one of the real benefits. And some of the shots that Drew's throwing a Firebird on is just ridiculous too. Just like, man, this is. There was the one hole where Simon hit like an early tree and it kind of kicked forward, and Andy turned to me and he's like, "That's like not good at all for him, but that's pretty much like all of what I'm looking for. Like if I can get there, I'm stoked." And that's like a full power hyzer, maxed with a farthest flying disc to get to where that was. And with Simon, he's annoyed because he hit a tree and didn't get all the way up to the basket. And then Eagle just absolutely pinning shots. So I know that I'm fairly certain Drew Gibson had the lead going into the third round for sure, and didn't quite have it anymore going into the final round. I'm not exactly sure. I'd have to add up totals and stuff like that, where I don't necessarily feel as though that's really going to provide a lot of benefit to you guys or insight. So you can see all this stuff for yourself. You just want to go look at UDisc and go look through all the scores. Also, probably check out Dixon Jower's podcast, where he does a much better job with the technical analysis of where people were sitting and the numbers and all that stuff. I just kind of wanted to break down this event because it's one of my favorites and I was there. So one interesting thing about this year, and I'm not sure exactly what contributed to it, but I felt as though I had a lot more trouble staying in context of the battle. I drifted around a little bit more than I typically do. There were a little bit more backups than usual, I'd say, probably because of the rain and some of the inclement weather slows everything down. Everybody's trying to take more time to dry off discs and secure footing on when they're putting and all that kind of stuff. I would assume that had something to do with it. I'm not 100% sure, but I just felt like I wasn't really enthralled in the battle and the scoring as well as I could have been. Part of the reason was because Drew and Garrett and Simon really weren't pushing Eagle all that much. It seemed like Garrett was definitely close for most of the round, but towards the end of the round, it was actually Paul Ulibarri. Actually, I saw Terry Miller after the round, and he had decided to film third card. Now, when you look at the third card, it was Ricky, Sexton, Philo, and who was the other guy? Oh, Dustin Keegan. So two local guys, including Nate, who's probably one of the most famous and likable disc golfers in the world at this point, with all the work he does with Jomez and other things. Like, Nate has become this huge fan favorite, and I think for good reason. He's a really nice guy, obviously. And then you have Philo, who's a big fan favorite as well, and Ricky and Dustin Keegan, who's a local guy shooting really well. So it was a natural choice to follow that card, but you had Paul Ulibarri on second card, who was doing super well, and he was tied or in the lead, and he was pushing Eagle the whole way. So it's kind of hard when you're the kind of the main storyline is manifesting as second card versus first card, and not so much lead card battling each other. I think Garrett was doing quite well, and then ran into some trouble towards the kind of towards the beginning of the back nine. He did not get the genius hole for 2. He did take a 3 there with a ridiculous save shot to get up to just absolutely park it from the second shot to tap in for 3, even though he hit early and kicked down onto the Didn't really get out of the gap. I mean, I'm sure he was looking to get a 2 there, and didn't work out that way. I don't think anybody got a 2 on the Genius Hole final round, which is quite interesting as well. Let me see if I can confirm that real quick. I think I can. Genius Hole is, yeah, there were no eagles from the lead card that I can see during the round. Simon just really wasn't shooting well, kind of fell off. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 birdies, and then he had 3 bogeys, 2 down. That's not good enough to keep you up there and be battling and pushing for the win here. Eagle ended up shooting an 8 down. Paul Ulibarri ended up with a 7 down. So I really can't give you a lot in context of the battle itself. I can say after the Genius Hole there, nobody on the lead card did super well with the Island Hole. Eagle got up and down for the 3. I think Drew might have as well. Yeah, maybe they all did. Let me look here. I think, yeah, Garrett did not. Garrett bogeyed that hole because he went out of bounds. Everybody else got the 3 there, but no real fireworks on that particular hole, on hole 10. Simon did not. Simon went out of bounds. That's right. Yeah, on his approach shot, trickled out the backside of the green. He went out of bounds. Then he goes out of bounds again on hole 11, which is the one we talked about earlier that Ulibarri deuced earlier in the tournament, which I've been going out to the Beaver State for several years in a row. I've never seen somebody go out of bounds left on that hole. I mean, the parking lot's there, but I really don't think I've ever seen anybody skip out into the parking lot like that. It's really a quite simple shot. I feel like Simon could probably 3 that hole with any disc in his bag. It's just maybe just a mental lapse. I'm not really sure. You don't really need much distance to get in a good position to get up and down. But I believe, did he even? Yeah, he took a bogey there as well. No, 11 he saved it. Then he took a bogey on 12, missing the little tiny island there. Eagle absolutely just stakes it, hits the pin for 2 there. That was a big moment. So kind of fast forward down the line here. Ulibarri ended up, I believe. Oh no, he took a 5 on the long monster par 4. What am I looking at here? Am I looking at the wrong course? What's the deal? Oh no, it's just hard to see. I need to zoom in on this a little bit. It looked like it was an 8, but I was like, no, that's not right. Yeah. So it's 11. Yeah, it's 1,100-foot par 4 on hole 14. It's a monster, true par 5. It's a par 5, par 4. I'm just butchering this. I'm looking at it because Eagle took a 4 on the par 5. Ulibarri got a 5 there. And then he 2'd the next hole, 15. Eagle saved a huge par after a bad drive and not a great upshot. Saved par there. And we're looking at it now, and when I alluded to earlier, when I saw Terry at the end of the round, I'm like, man, you really dodged a bullet, because he followed third card. And meanwhile, the biggest charge towards the top of the leaderboard was coming from second card, and it was Paul Ulibarri. Nothing against Eagle. And spoiler alert, if you don't know already, Eagle goes on to win the event. But I was really pulling for Paul Ulibarri. I feel like he's the pro's pro. I have a lot of respect for him. He's always been at the high level of the game the entire time that I've been aware of the professional side of disc golf. He's been right up there. Just seems like such a solid person, and you don't really see him like blow up, or he's always professional out there. And I was really pulling for Yuli to get up there. I'm still super stoked that he took second, and once again showed us that he has what it takes to compete with the world's best. And he is one of the world's best, 100%, but he hasn't really been performing at that level for a little while now. And I'd really love to see Yuli up in contention, challenging for these big wins more often. He's such a solid dude. He's a great player, and I'm just a big fan. I really like when he does commentary as well. I don't know, a lot of people seem to take offense to anybody other than Nate and Germ doing it at this point, which is kind of frustrating, but I love Germ and Ulibarri. During Utah last year, that was awesome. I thought they did a great job. I really like Ulibarri's commentary style. He does good analysis. I like his dry humor. All that stuff is great. So I'm a big fan of Yuli. We're kind of like in a very, very loose sense colleagues, since we both kind of submit content or appear on Smashbox in some way. And I got a lot of love for Yuli. So I was really sad that basically what happened, going into hole 16, I believe they were tied or with relatively close between Eagle and Paul. Paul ended up having a lot of trouble getting the hole over with on hole 16, ends up taking double bogey 6. Eagle gets up and down for the par there, and all he has to do is par out. He gets to 17, which is a very dangerous shot. If you go for it, you can get in some big trouble, take a big number quick, or at least go over par easily on the hole. He just throws the check up forehand, kind of Nate Sexton line. The same thing Ricky did when he was playing with the lead against Philo in 2016. Bail out forehand. There's a ton of room out to the right. You just throw it out there, throw it up and down for 3. You don't need a 2 there. Why challenge the horrible rough on the left-hand side? That's just, it's game over. If you go in that rough, you're not getting the par hardly ever. That's what happened to Ricky last year. He honestly didn't even need to go to the playoff. He ended up taking the 4 there. Kind of, if he would have just went with the safe forehand that Eagle played this year, and that he played the year before and just played for the 3 there, I don't even think he would have had to worry about the playoff. He would have just won outright based on the way everything went down. Of course, that's all hindsight or whatever. But Eagle plays for the 3, and then he plays for the 3 on. He goes for the 2 on 18. Absolutely parks it. Paul Ulibarri got the 2 on 18. It wasn't quite enough. Eagle steps up to tap in the 2 for the win, and it cuts through, which is just ridiculous. Cuts through, punches out. But luckily, he had enough strokes to play with. It didn't really matter. Paul Ulibarri falling just short. Eagle steps up, taps it in for the win, and he has now won 3 out of 4 National Tour events. Now, you guys know I'm a giant Ricky fan. I do not try to hide it by any means. No attempt to conceal that fact. But you got to say Eagle McMahon's the best player in the world right now. I mean, there's no argument as far as I'm concerned. 3 out of the 4 national tours. We'll see how he does coming up in Utah. But regardless, I mean, just based on his national tour performances alone, the consistency of his rounds, his ability to kind of learn how to win. He's doing. It kind of reminds me of shades of Ricky in 2016, where he had all the skill, and all of a sudden, just kind of it all clicked mentally to figure out how to win and how to close the show. And Eagle has clearly figured that out. I think he said it early in the year that he was going to play somewhat more conservative style, kind of more smart Nate Sexton golf. But he still has the ability to throw so much farther, so much easier. And like we talked about earlier, he can club down to fairway drivers, to mid-ranges, and throw a lot more controlled shots based on that. He can also throw much more overstable discs to prevent any type of accidental turnovers and stuff. When he needs it to go hyzer, he can throw that Metal Flake Max, a disc I could probably throw 100 feet, and he can park a 400-foot hyzer with that thing. And it's just making it work. It's just everything's working for the kid. He's just hitting all these putts and playing so consistent and playing smart golf, but still using his extremely high-level skill set to execute these shots. And he's the player to beat right now. I don't care what anybody says. Again, I'm a huge Rick fan. Rick took down Masters Cup. He looked great doing it. And I would not be surprised to see Ricky win the next couple in a row. I wouldn't be surprised to see Simon take down another event this year. Paul could jump up and win another one like he did in San Francisco. But I think you're being unrealistic and somewhat unfair to Eagle to not say that he's the best player in the world right now. So far this season, Eagle McMahon's the player to beat. He's the best in the world at the moment. We'll see how the rest of the tour fleshes out, but yeah, I think it's really hard to say that he's not. Other things that stood out for me is really great to see Garrett Gerthy in person. He's a really nice dude. I interacted with him just a little bit, and he seems really gracious and super friendly to everybody. I've met him before, actually, at Worlds years ago. I met him, and he's a really nice dude, and it's happy to see him back out there. I don't understand how he puts the energy he does on the disc. He's butter smooth, and the thing just comes out of his hand just crushing. He parked the hole 15 is like a over 400 foot, dead straight shot up onto a mound, slight uphill, and he just absolutely put it within like 3 feet with a rock, just on a laser, all the way there. It's just so beautiful to watch. It's really awesome. Again, that hole, I'm throwing a thrasher, which is a distance driver, and I'm looking to get to the base of the mound if I can, to have a look at it too. And he's throwing a rock straight up the gut on a laser right to the pin. So that's where those differences really come to play. And obviously, when you stretch out to these longer courses, guys like Garrett and Simon and Drew and Eagle, and obviously Paul and Ricky and all of our top arms can just reach stuff that you can't reach, and they make it work for them really well. Simon, it sounds ridiculous for me to even try to like critique Simon, but he just makes really poor decisions sometimes. I feel like if Simon had more of an approach like Eagle's been taking, kind of that air quotes Nate Sexton golf, which really is just a way to say intelligent, strategic golf, I think Simon would be more successful with that. He goes for things that he really doesn't need to, and he gets himself into more trouble sometimes. He had some bad luck last round as well, for sure. He barely trickled off the island OB. He like kind of clipped the curb where if it was another foot in front of it, it would have skipped off the road right at the basket and at least made the island to save 3 on that next hole after, I guess, hole 12 it would be. Stuff like that. But then on hole 16, he has a bad drive, and he goes for this just incredibly low percentage cut roller through no gap, ends up just hitting a whole bunch of crap, kicks into the woods, and just he has to pitch out from there. It's just like he just makes weird decisions, I think almost to the point where he has so much skill and he can execute such ridiculous shots at times that he goes for things that just don't make sense. And again, it's absurd for me to be like critiquing Simon, who's this incredible player and one of the most talented throwers of a disc that's ever existed. But just from watching him live, this is the first time I've really followed him for a full round that I can recall. Yeah, it must be. And just some of the things he tries to go for, it just doesn't make a lot of sense. And I feel like eventually he may kind of rein it in and be able to play more conservative, kind of like Ricky. Ricky doesn't really try to bite off too much. He will take his medicine when he needs to. And Simon just will never take it. He just will not pitch out into the fairway hardly ever. He'll always go for it, and sometimes he'll execute it, sometimes he won't. He also pulls out these amazing things that are just ridiculous and super fun for everybody as well. And he's not hurting for money, so I don't think the placing in terms of like, oh, I need to save these 2 strokes because I'm going to make another couple $100. I don't think Simon cares about that. He's well taken care of by Discmania, and so I don't think that's really an issue for him. So he goes for things that are just ridiculous to have fun and wow the crowd, and people love him for it. So he's going to do him, and it's all good. And obviously, again, it's dumb for me to even critique him, but it's just something that I think of. He went for this roller earlier in the round. I believe it's hole 7. Yeah, hole 7. Just disgusting. I don't even know how far it traveled. The thing was just bananas. It went all the way up the hill, just to the point where all he had to do was kind of pitch over. He tried to run it for 2, and the funny thing is he throws this insane roller that's just, I've never seen anyone within a few hundred feet of where he ended up. I mean, it was just ridiculous. And after the second shots, he's the farthest away from the pin. He still made the birdie. But yeah, he goes aggressive, tries to throw it in for 2, and that's kind of what he was going for in the first place, I guess. And ends up with a longer putt for 3 than everybody else who just played the straight to hyzer finish around the corner, pitch up, tap in. So it's kind of interesting to see the different approaches out there, but solid event by Drew Gibson. He kind of let the last 2 rounds get away from him a little bit. He was not able to continue his hot putting that he had in the first 2 rounds. I blame Andy firmly. It's all Andy's fault. He was clearly not taking good enough care of Drew Friday night and Saturday night. But yeah, that's pretty much it for Beaver State after the round. going into 18, I didn't even quite see the drives come in because I think part of the reason why I wasn't able to really keep up with the battle as well as I have in previous years is that the gallery was massive, and there were a ton of umbrellas as well because it was rainy, and it was just really hard to get into position to see stuff at certain times. So towards the end of the round, I knew Eagle had a few strokes going into the last hole, and unless something just absolutely ridiculous happened. So I didn't even really watch the drives. I kind of cut through. But I did see him go to tap in for 2 for the win, have it cut through, and everybody was able to laugh it out. Here's something I'd like to see going forward. Personal thing. I'm sure other people have felt like it should be a thing, especially after watching the coverage. The tee pads and the baskets at Milo for sure deserve to be upgraded. It's one of the most famed and revered disc golf courses in the world by professional and just casual players alike. There's absolutely no reason why they should be playing on these old, slippery, worn-out tee pads and playing on baskets with rusted-out chains that are not catching as well as they could. Disc catchers are great catching baskets in general, and to see some new, fresh disc catchers out there for next year, I think would be extremely smart and very well-deserved. I don't know what it would take to make that happen. It's kind of frustrating knowing that the Oregon State Park system gets money for every single car that comes through the door, comes through the gates of that park all year long, and I'm sure they have it well within the budget to show the disc golf course some love with some fresh baskets. And I'm sure, the Jeffs who run the event, Haggerty and Middle, I'm sure they could do some type of fundraising events or something like that out there as well to help with that. And I bet you if you just threw out a call and said, hey, here's a GoFundMe account for Milo. We want new baskets from Milo, and then if we buy the baskets, the state will put in new tee pads or something like that. I bet you a lot of golfers would throw in, myself included, get a couple of bucks into the pot and help that happen, because some of the spit outs were kind of ridiculous, cut throughs and bounce outs that are kind of unnecessary and are really one of my least favorite things about disc golf. Seeing somebody hit something pure into the heart of the basket and have it turn sideways and cut through the chains, it's just dumb. I'm not a big fan of that. So luckily it didn't cost Eagle the win. Congratulations to Eagle. On the FPO side, Paige Pierce had a lead towards the end of the round. You can see it all on Jomez. Katrina picked up 3 strokes in the last few holes, took it to a playoff, and took it down again. Katrina has done the same thing to Paige a couple years ago. Paige steamrolled the field by like 20 or 18 strokes last year. Katrina gets the job done this year. Also very happy to see Katrina shooting well and back at her best. I think the FPO division will be a lot more fun. Even though I'm a huge Paige fan, don't get me wrong, I think it'll be a lot more fun going forward for that division to have more battles, more tight battles like that, going to playoffs, having it all be tight, rather than Paige just leading from the front and winning, steamrolling the field. It'll be cool to see more players able to jump up into contention, and happy to see Katrina take down a big signature win again for this season. After the round, I bummed around Tournament Central a little bit. I ended up meeting Jomez earlier before the round. I got a picture with him. It was good to meet Jonathan. That was cool. Also stopped by to say hello to Levi from Pound Disc Golf. His bags are phenomenal. I went to say hello to the Flight Towel people. You can find my review on the Flight Towel here on my channel. It's a really cool product. It's essentially a really nice microfiber towel that has a piece of a disc attached to it, so you can use your actual grip and throwing motion to warm up for rounds or practice your timing or anything like that without actually having to throw the discs. That's really nice, and it's just a great great towel that you can have to dry off your plastic, which is always something that everybody needs. So it was really great to meet them and say hello. Very nice people as well. I saw Ricky after the round. I said hello to him real quick. I actually ended up giving Ricky one of my DGN stamped discs. I had a red medium Disc Golf Nerd harp that I've been holding on to for a while with that purpose in mind. Just give it to Ricky. I was like, here. I was like, sorry if this is weird. I don't need you to sign anything, because everybody was waiting to say hello and buy plastic or get their disc signed. And Ricky's just so gracious, just all smiles and just taking pictures with kids and everybody and signing everybody's plastic and just cool as can be. And I was just like, look, I don't care what you do with it. I just want you to have it. Throw it off a cliff. Use it for field work. I don't know, eat a bowl of cereal out of it. I really don't care. I'm just a fan. I wanted you to have it. It's my stamp from my YouTube channel, and he was real cool about it. And that was about it. I met Seth Muncie from Disc Golf Strong. I met him, spoke to him a little while. Really nice dude, very knowledgeable. I picked his brain a little bit about certain things, and I'm definitely a believer in what he's been doing, and I think it's something that I very much need to look into. Doing more of his stability exercises to help keeping myself loose and fit enough and mobile enough to continue playing the game that I love and try to avoid injuries. Is something I'm dreading, that day where I do something and turn that corner where I can't throw for a while. It's going to be a real sad day. It's going to happen. I know it will, but I would like to really try to mitigate it as much as possible. And then I also ran into Terry and just said hello, kind of filled him in on what I've been up to and saw how things were going for him. And yeah, I told him that, man, you dodged a bullet not following Yuli, because if Yuli would have jumped up and won from second card with no coverage on it, that would have been pretty rough. But I guess fortunately for Terry and for the media teams, and very unfortunately for Paul Ulibarri and myself and all of his fans, he was unable to make that happen. If he got the 3 on 16, it would have been real interesting. It would have been super cool to see Paul and Eagle, kind of the old guard and the new guard, go to a playoff. That would have been pretty epic, and playoffs are very common out here in Portland. I'm going to let you guys go. I went a lot longer with this episode than I thought I would have. A lot of rambling to do. Maybe I'll trim some of that out during the editing process. Much love to everybody out there. Thanks for listening. Thanks for your continued support of my channel. Got some new videos coming out soon, I'm sure. I have to get out and do some more field testing and filming of some more plastic to be able to get some new reviews out there. But I have one more in the can that'll go up next week just to try to spread it out a little bit, since I don't have any other footage for any of the other stuff just yet. But I will start filming and testing all the Trilogy Challenge stuff, and hoping to get an Innova Rat relatively soon, start testing that as well. And stay tuned. Hit me up if you need anything. discgolfnerd1@gmail.com, discgolfnerd1 on Instagram. And I'll talk to you all very soon. All right, cheers.